Time List. This week, we are covering a big one, debatably one of the most important rock records of the 21st century. Now, if you guessed Huey Lewis and the News' comeback album, Plan B, you'd be wrong, and probably should seek professional help. We are in fact jumping into the Strokes' debut album, Is This It? An album with enough superlatives to fill up a 3 hour podcast, but for the sake of brevity, we'll keep it short and just say it's an important, excellent, well timed album. Joining this week to discuss the Strokes' Is This It? And the impact it had on him, as well as sharing his adventures from his time writing for NME, please welcome Tim Jones.
Great to be
You
here.
might have read his work at NME, as well as for Vice or the British magazine Dazed, but now you can find him as the associate editor of Guardian Culture for truly one of the best websites for journalism, theguardian.com. And just a side note to my American listeners out there, great unbiased website, really truthful and honest. So encourage you to check it out if you don't already. But welcome, Tim.
It's great to be here. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me on.
Absolutely. Always excited to talk to some of the minds that got to inform the taste. So kind of curious, what was your path early on to working at NME? What got you going there?
It was like a modern version of do you know about the hip young gunslingers advert that they had in? Is that a thing that you know about in America?
I don't know that one,
Young
no.
Gunslingers.
It was a famous advert in the NME in the 70s where they got all their punk writers like Julie Burchill and Tony Parsons, and it said they're looking for hip young gunslingers. And so this was like the 2000s equivalent of that. There was, I was desperate to break into the NME, but I had no idea how it would be possible. I was about 21, 22. I was living at home and I was working at an IT help center and wondering what the hell I was going to do with my life. And then one week, the NME had an advert saying, there's all these new bands coming out and we need new writers who are as enthusiastic as, as our readers. And I was like, right, I've got to do it. So I sent a review off to this advert of the Moldy Peaches. And then I sent, as a kind of afterthought, sent another one off of the Coral, and that was it really. And then a few weeks later, I just got a phone call, and I was always just like really relieved that my mum didn't answer the phone when the phone call came, because I was trying to kind of be this edgy rock critic, and then
Oh, totally.
really embarrassing if they're like, Tim, there's someone on the phone.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, and then I almost just couldn't believe it was happening, really. And then, I just completely got plucked from living in the Midlands to moving to London, and just went from there, really.
So had you been doing writing before that, or was it really just jobs?
Yeah, I'd been doing I'd been writing on the student paper, and I'd done lots of music reviews and occasional game reviews, and I'd been in. Maybe we'll get to this later, but I'd been living in New York for a little bit, and because of the Strokes, basically, I'd moved to New York, so I had a column for the paper talking about life in New York. So I kind of had developed what I'd say was like a journalistic voice during that period, which kind of was like, I guess, an alter ego of me, kind of the version of me I'd like to have been.
The version in the Meet Me in the Bathroom book, and
Yeah,
everything.
right.
The cool kid with the 3 a.m. New York party and all that thing going on.
Totally.
So early on, when you're getting started, was there any like those starstruck moments that you had? Like, I can't believe I'm backstage with this band. Anything that just like, wow, I made it.
Absolutely. I mean, early on, just being an NME writer, like even just going, like the first gigs, you feel like you should have some kind of qualification or something that's got you this job, and then you just turn up and I remember people saying, "What, you're from the NME?" and I'd say, "Yeah, well, I think so." Like, because do you know what I mean? You've not really been
That's
given.
what they tell me.
Yeah, exactly. It's literally just someone's told you one day, and then suddenly you are, and it just felt like quite a big status increase because I was, on a help center at Transco Gas Company before that, so it did feel quite strange. But in terms of big starstruck moments during my time at NME, which was about 2003 to 2008. Definitely meet an Oasis, um, because I think it doesn't matter how big the band is, but when you meet a band who were literally on posters on your bedroom wall when you were 14, that's that's when you really kind of turn to jelly.
Yeah, exactly. It's a humbling moment, you know. Maybe you can play it cool on the outside, but inside's a little different story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, and I just kind of got terrorized by Liam Gallagher, who was just made total mincemeat out of me, but it was very funny. I got a great interview out of them, so it was really good.
We have a segment on our show every once in a while called Noel Way, where my co-host tells three different Gallagher brothers stories, and I have to guess which one is false and which ones are true. And usually the catch every time I always fall for it is they're all true because they're all just crazy
Or there's
men.
like some
So
small technical reason it's not true, but it
Right,
actually is
right.
kind of true.
exactly, yeah, exactly. So you mentioned living in New York for a little bit. What was
Yeah,
your opinion, kind of prior to that, like late 90s of the rock and indie scene, you know, the
yeah.
2000, 2001? Yeah, where were your tastes then?
Well, there's lots of bands I liked. I mean, I was always going to gigs. I was living in Leeds. That's where I was at university. So there's lots. Oh, there was lots of decent bands, but they weren't bands that you were going to get this big kind of youth culture scene around. So there's bands like, and you will know this by the Trail of Dead, Sigur Rós, Godspeed You, Black Emperor. Those are the kind of bands I was listening to. But there was, I suppose who were the big bands? It's like Radiohead, but that was sort of half. They were so big by that point.
Right.
And
Filling out the arenas by then, yeah.
And then obviously there was the bands people talk about of this era being like Coldplay and Travis and how dismal it all was and how unexciting the scene was. And it was sort of true. I mean, I saw lots of great bands during that period, but it didn't feel like anything was that sexy or exciting. And I think I saw Mull Historical Society about 21 times in one year because they seemed to support every band I saw. Um, yeah, so it wasn't that thrilling. I think everyone was sort of waiting for something to happen.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
it always sort of feels like sometimes the narrative of like an era or something like that is kind of put on afterwards. But I mean, in reading about it, like the Strokes themselves were such kind of an immediate hit.
Yeah,
People kind of recognized it in the moment, like, oh wait, hold on.
yeah, totally. It's not something that's completely been like retrofitted. Actually, it was.
No,
I
yeah.
I was totally. I mean, I have such vivid memories of seeing the picture that Penny Smith took of the band, the black and white picture in the NME, and reading that, the journalist was just going crazy saying this is the most exciting band. It's going to change everything. I totally like was all in even before I'd heard the music. Um, just so
I mean,
excited.
they were rock and roll. I mean, we were listening to bands like you mentioned Godspeed and Belt and Sebastian, and
Yeah,
things that are great musically, but not that same rock and roll energy. But I
absolutely.
guess that's maybe a good segue to say like, what was your first exposure to the Strokes and their music? Was that something like instantly caught on and loved it, or like you thought these guys are no doubt superstars?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, like I said, the picture was good on its own, but then the enemy had a cover mount CD. Um, I can't remember. I think it just had the Modern Age on it, um, unless it had more songs than that. But yeah, that song, the Modern Age, it was like kind of a rougher, slightly faster version than was on the album, and I think it's actually better than the version that ended up on the album. And I just had everything. I mean, it had like the Velvet Underground, one of my favorite bands, had like the
Mm.
television guitar lines. And this sounds like such a diss, and it's really not meant to be a diss, but they sort of compressed all that New York art rock punk history into quite a kind of catchy mainstream kind of nugget, 3 minute nugget of pop genius. And it was just so exciting because there was nothing like that around.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a good point, though. I mean, they kind of took all those influences and forged it into something new and fresh for a modern audience. I mean, I think it was one of the few bands, even over here in the States, we could reliably see on MTV,
Yeah,
after Last Night came out. And that's something, a year before that, it was nothing but new metal and post grunge Fallout type stuff. So to have this
Yeah.
indie band on there all of a sudden, amazing.
Yeah, I think it's probably. I mean, obviously we had all the new metal stuff here, but maybe didn't feel like it's part. It wasn't part of my world at all, and it wasn't
Yeah,
that much of enemy world. They sort of had to cover it a bit, but yeah,
yeah, yeah. Kept it distance enough. So
yes.
you mentioned, you know, really the Strokes having an impact on your life and that music. I was wondering if you could kind of walk us through, like, it got you over to New York. Like, what was the inspiration for you there?
So I was just finishing university, and I saw there's this opportunity you could get a work visa for maybe 6 months. Um, so I just took that up really, and I went with a couple of friends and had no idea what I was doing. I mean, the idea was you went to somewhere basically like maybe in the Midwest and worked on a farm. There was all these placements, but we didn't
Hmm.
take any of the placements. We just moved to New York, and I didn't really even know. I didn't know the first thing about New York or working or anything, and had to get. I got a job as a courier, delivering sort of parcels around New York, but I didn't have a bike.
Nice.
I didn't have a bike, so I did it all on foot using
Oh
the
no.
subway, um, which was an amazing way of discovering New York and getting your bearings and seeing all these different areas, but a terrible way of staying alive because you, you made like no money and it was really exhausting. Yeah, so I did that for a few weeks and then I worked in some cafe in Greenwich Village.
I was gonna say, yeah, even just to be there, like if I had to sell single slices of pizza, I'd be happy just to
Yeah,
be,
I
in the
mean,
city at that point.
totally, and the music scene was amazing there at the time. And it wasn't like nowadays where if there's a big hot band, you can't really see them unless you're like on the phone lines and getting the tickets. It was quite America caught on to these bands later than Britain. So I was getting the enemy and knew about these bands, but it felt like not everyone knew in New York. So I was going to see Interpol, I was going to see Liars, going to see
Mm,
Moldy Peaches, so many bands like that who were just sort of starting out, and you could just buy tickets and go and see it. It was
right.
fantastic. Yeah,
No, I had an old man moment the other day, just kind of reviewing some concert stubs I had, and I had the chance to see the Strokes and Moldy Peaches uh, in Tacoma, just outside of Seattle, and the ticket was $6. I
yes,
mean,
the price for
in 2001, $6. I mean, even then that was cheap. And I'm just thinking today, like I sat on the internet refreshing over and over to get that uh, Enzine de Poitin ticket, the French duo, and they are gone in 90 seconds, and now the
yeah,
resale value is $300. Just from the viral marketing. It's a completely
It's a
different game
different
these
world.
days.
it
Yeah,
is, and it doesn't feel like music is more important now. So it's quite weird. It feels, in a way, to me, it feels like music is a bit less important to people now. But there's a
yeah.
weird, I can't really work it out because, yeah,
Yeah,
So
I think it's
yeah.
just having so much more of a population like plugged in and like
yeah,
yeah, like the awareness is up, but like yeah, it's just there's just more people who like it's like a wider net, but it's not, you know, it's easier to get the general people to come grab like certain kinds of tickets.
I think that's true. There's not the intense fandom. I mean, I think being into a band, even like the Strokes, you felt like a bit of a slight outsider. You're into guitar music, you're into indie music. You knew what was
Oh,
what.
yeah, at
And
that point, if you were
everyone,
listening to any kind of music that didn't have a turntablist in the band, you were probably on the outside a bit.
Hmm. So yeah, did you have when you're in New York, did you have a chance to see the Strokes, on that come up when they were doing their
actually,
residencies or
they were the one band I couldn't get a ticket to. They were the one band who were
mm,
already so famous. I think I tried to go and see them at Irving Plaza. They played a show there. Um, and I didn't get a ticket, and I was really gutted about that. But I did, yeah, I did see them later. But I have to say, unlike all these other bands I'm talking about, the Strokes, I can't remember when I first saw them, and I think that speaks maybe to the fact that I was a bit disappointed in their live show. I don't know. I don't know why I would be. I think probably because I built them up so much But sometimes, I mean, what do you think? Do you think they were a great live band? I thought they were okay.
I think I let the hype carry me through the show and
Yes.
be excited and enjoy it. And I loved hearing the songs. But at the end of the day, it was hearing the record live at that point,
Mm.
and it was great because loud. I'm with people sharing this moment. But the band itself, I don't know if like they seemed very enthusiastic and outgoing at the time, and
I
maybe over the years they crafted that. But in 2001, maybe a little just kind of phoning it in at times.
well,
Right.
2001 and that far from their home base too, like I can kind of imagine. But
Yeah.
I
I
had
think
kind of the same experience as Tim where I saw them a little after. It may have been one album. It was at least one album after or it was after the Room on Fire time. And I think I saw them in Seattle. I can't remember the exact year. Um but at our show at least Julian and maybe more than one member of the band was like intensely drunk because they
Mm.
had explained that they had spent pretty much all day. I think the venue here was the Moore, and them and shoot, I can't remember the band who was opening for them. It'll come to me. The album was something Queen Mary. But anyways,
Hmm.
and I think they may have had Wolf in the name, as many people did. But yeah, they were like, yeah, at least Julian and then maybe one more member of the band were like intensely drunk for the show, and then they like made their way through a few songs, and I was like, yeah, this isn't a great show. It's kind of an okay experience, but
yeah,
yeah, not the best live show I've ever seen. I think they were
Yeah.
probably getting burnt out by then.
yeah. I think if I'd gone to see them in 2001, I'd have been absolutely blown away. But I think by the time I kind of got back to England and then got a ticket, it was probably a couple of years later or something. I don't know. I think it just didn't live up to all the feelings I had in 2001, where they was just the most important thing in the world to me. I think that's
Yeah,
what it was.
exactly. I mean, our friend group at the time, were reading Spin and Enemy and all these things, just kind of waiting for these bands to come through. We're living in an area where we just because of our ages just missed the grunge scene. So now, we're kind of waiting for our thing. And for like us, the Strokes was, guys, we have a rock band now. We have a scene, and yeah, it was good, but I don't know if it made the impression we were hoping for ultimately. But man, the album got tons of listens in spite of the live show. We played some of the songs in our band. We would cover when we were jamming and everything. So it made its mark on us for sure.
Definitely. Yeah, that whole, I mean, Is This It came out while I was in New York, and that was just the soundtrack for everything we did, like the whole time we were there. So
Right. So were you in New York during 9/11?
yes, I was, yes.
Wow.
And that was quite a we were living out in Queens, and we had this crazy schedule where we had to get into Manhattan for shifts at like 8 a.m. sometimes or 9 a.m. And so I just remember the people we were living with, it was like this lovely Puerto Rican family who probably wondered why these weirdos were sleeping and moved there and were sleeping in their spare room. They came in to tell us what had happened, and we were just like, "Oh yeah, okay, fine," and then we tried to go back to sleep.
Right, right.
And then they kind of came back in and said, "No, I think you should come and watch this. It's quite important." So that was the mindset we were in at the moment. Yeah, and a
Yeah.
very strange atmosphere in the city after that, which especially with all this stuff was going on. I think I might have gone to Sidewalk Cafe that night or the night after. I remember people talking about it and on the stage, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the huge moment with its repercussions still today.
Yes,
Um,
really.
yeah. So, you talked about you saw them a little later. Are there any like favorite show moments or I guess interactions and backstage moments you've had with the band over the years? I was reading one of your interviews the other day with Julian, and he seemed kind of defensive in one of them.
Is that the Guardian one about for his?
Yes, yeah,
So I think Julian's solo album is probably my favorite Strokes record, if you can call it that. After Is This It? I really love that record. But yeah, so when I was at NME, I went to New York to interview the band. Um, and that was, again, they were still like these massive idols to me. That was around their third album, and so what was that called? First Impressions of Earth, which was not great in my opinion. In fact, I thought it was quite awful. And I've recently listened to, I sort of gave up on the Strokes, but recently I went back and listened to their later albums, and there are some really good songs on those later records, but First Impressions of Earth is not great. And yeah, I went to I don't know, I think they were just a bit jaded by then. Albert and Fab were nice, really nice. Nikolai was fine. Julian just wouldn't really open up at all, and then Nick was just like your cliche of an arrogant kind of rock and roller. But they didn't. Sorry, I don't want to come on this podcast and be all negative about.
No. I mean, we're all about honesty, you know. Yeah.
It just didn't seem that cool. I was really, because I've met a lot of kind of bands who seem really cool, and they just seemed a bit dweeby at times, and I just wasn't that convinced by them. And I went for a drink with Nikolai and the manager, I think, later on, and Nikolai got drunk very quickly and easily, and he like kicked a trash can in the street, and it was just really like, it was quite funny, but it was just like
just cutting loose. Yeah
it was like trying to be like a bad boy rock and roller, but that's not working.
We actually had another Enemy writer on several months ago who had mentioned he didn't want to say the name of the band, but it was one of those bands he was really looking forward to meeting, and they just came across as like completely flat, one-word answers, and I'm starting to kind of wonder now, like, maybe we have a suspect on that character now.
I should point out that Fab was absolutely charming and lovely, and actually when I first got in there, Julie, I think. No, it might have been Fab actually. Yeah, but they were saying like, I'm got a really good vibe about this interview. I think it's going to go really well. And when I went to interview Julian in LA, that was for The Guardian. But again, he was really friendly when I met him. But I don't know what happened. It was like I really liked the album. I was really looking forward to talking to him. But he was almost comically. Just reserved, just comically reticent to say anything. And there was this really funny bit where he said he wanted to be a polymath, and I asked him what sort of things he'd like to do, and he couldn't really list a single thing that he wanted to do. He said maybe design a video character, which just really made me laugh, because I thought, well,
okay,
it's not quite Benjamin Franklin, is it? What I mean?
Yeah, I mean, who's stopping you? But okay, yeah. Random Julian, yeah.
But yeah, so I got kind of, but I think he's a complex guy, maybe behind the veneer, and I think he's got maybe some things going on. Yeah,
absolutely. So you kind of touched on it with that third album there. I think it's fair to say the other albums really haven't gotten the same admiration as Is This It over the years.
Yeah.
Which, hey, you can only make a scene-changing album so many times in your life.
Yes.
Do you think the expectations and like this almost like rock savior status, where it's just impossible to meet, I mean, is that something that weighed on Julian and the band?
I think so. I think it happens to all bands. I mean, so many bands I love, when I finally find this album that I love so much, then the next one almost always disappoints me, and I never know if that's because I'm just unlucky, or if it's just impossible to make two albums like that. I mean, the second album was sort of like more of the same, wasn't it? Room on Fire. It was sort of more of the same, but probably not quite as good. I mean, my wife absolutely loves Room on Fire, and she probably thinks it's as good as Is This It? But I didn't quite. I was a bit bored by it.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for the idea, like, if Room on Fire had come first, just because of the timing, maybe we look at it differently.
Yes, definitely.
But yeah, I think, yeah,
Wouldn't be great
it's
because
hard.
it'd look like a good album and then and a great album second, and it'd be, you know, that it
Right.
Room on Fire would have been very exciting as a debut album, definitely.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. For me, Room on Fire was one. I had the same thing. Like, it's the, it's the like in the moment the follow. I got the follow up, and I'm like, okay, this is all right. But then, putting it down and then coming back years later, I was kind of like, yeah, I really do like Room on Fire. I don't. I think, Is This It is kind of a perfect object as a whole, but there's a few tracks on Room on Fire where I'm like, these are these are kind of more my jam. I don't know. Like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's not as complete, but there's moments on there where I'm like, all right.
The highs
Yeah.
are high and the lows are low.
I mean, Under Control is one of my favorite Strokes songs. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and my wife's favorite Strokes song is 1251. So you know, there's
Oh,
so yeah. Which
So
when I
it gets
first
some.
heard that, I thought this is just such a dismal comeback single, but you know, I've come around to it now. I like it now. So yeah.
So I'm curious too, like, as a music journalist and a fan, is that hard to be biased when you're writing? Is it kind of one of those things where you have to hold back your excitement? I don't want to come across as a fan in this article, or also I don't want these guys to look a certain way. I mean, how does that influence your writing and being a journalist?
Yeah, I'd say that's not really that much of an issue, especially not at NME. We're kind of hired to be enthusiastic and to be overexcited by these records. I think the only issue really is if you're friends with the band, uh,
Mm,
and then you're reviewing their stuff. But you know, being a fan of the band and reviewing it is, I mean, it's all subjective anyway, isn't it? So how could you remove your fandom for a record and then and review it? Do you know what I mean? It's almost like
totally.
doesn't make sense. So no, we were encouraged really to be infused. We were encouraged to be. I mean, we get a reputation, the enemy, for being like, you know, quite snarky, snide, you know, knock people down. But I think we were much better at building people up and being probably over enthusiastic about all these bands that were coming out. Yeah.
I mean, for as many, hit pieces on Morrissey over the years, there's 100 more articles of promoting bands and new artists and
I,
everything like that.
I was
So
about I
I
was
would agree
about to
with
say
that.
there may be a I was about to say there may be a main suspect for where the accusations of snarkiness go.
Yes.
Big Mouth himself, yeah.
Yeah. Did so did you were you one of the people who got to submit a list to the top 500?
No, sadly not. I'd left by that point.
Mm.
But I did have a good look at the list before coming on. It did make me chuckle quite a bit. It was kind of pre, what was it? Was it 2013?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was kind
Yeah, I
of
think it was
pre.
like October or something like that, 2013.
yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there's no. I mean, you know, there's loads of great albums on the list, but it's just very funny the lack of. You know, it's such a white male dominated list. And in a way, that's because it's put together by NME, and that is what the audience wants. So it does make sense as well. But I think if they did that list now, it'd be quite different. Um, yeah, I think is
Yeah.
there a woman in the top 10? I don't even know if there is. I think maybe Nico, if you count Nico, but that's about it.
Right. That's pretty much it. I'm curious though, like since 2013, is there anything that jumps out to you that you would put on that list? Maybe even like top 100?
I mean, when I read that, kind of when I thought about that question, I thought, well, my mind goes blank quite a bit, and then I had a proper look, and there's two albums I would put on there. I put Blonde by Frank Ocean, um,
Mm.
and I would put the Cindy Lee record, which Diamond Jubilee, which came out last year or the year before. Um, I
Mm,
don't, I don't know if you know that one.
No,
mm.
that's a new one for us.
I do know the
When's the
Frank
new?
Ocean one.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely amazing, this Cindy Lee record, and it's only available to buy. I think you can't get listen to it on Spotify. I think you can listen to it on YouTube. It's called
Diamond Jubilee, you said it's called?
Lee. Yeah, it's
Okay.
really long. I don't know if it's a double or maybe a triple album.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, it says it's 2 hours on
yeah,
the YouTube. Yeah. Okay, awesome.
if you like it's like girl groups, Velvet Underground, but really lo-fi. It all it just sounds like it's a bit like Big Star's Third, actually. If you like that kind of aesthetic, where it all sort of sounds on the verge of collapsing, but it kind of just about hangs together. Yeah, absolutely
Oh, all right. I'm
phenomenal. But
I'm I'm intrigued.
there's probably lots of other records I'd put on from, but those are the two that kind of instantly I thought, oh yes,
So
those.
um, we always like to ask the critics too, how do you ingest new music? For you, is it a car ride? Is it, sitting down with a pint and your headphones and put a vinyl on? What's your kind of way to absorb something new?
Um, I think when I really want to listen to something new, it'd be headphones while I'm walking somewhere or driving. But yeah, walking, I think that's when I most get into something. And I kind of drift away and have this weird way of listening where I'm almost the person performing it in my head. I know that sounds quite,
Mm,
but that's kind of how I feel. It's like that. I guess that's how I embrace the lyrics and stuff. But I'm really, really kind of becoming that cliche of the music journalist who secretly wants to be in the band, but revealing
hey,
that
those
frustrated
who can't do
musician.
well enough criticize or something to that extent, as they say.
But I tell you
Totally
something,
get it.
working at NME for several years, the one thing it does make you not want to be is a pop star or musician of any kind, because it doesn't look like a very nice life. It's
Yeah, you see the other side.
yes, you get all the fun bits as a journalist because you get to go hang around for a bit, but you don't have to stay on the tour. You don't have to do the tour when it comes back to Lincoln,
Yeah. It's
Bath.
like being a grandparent and handing the kid back after the weekend's over, like, all right.
That's totally what it's like. Yeah. So
Let's see. Yeah. So, any lessons from your time at NME that still kind of stick out to you as you write at the Guardian?
um lessons. I don't know. I think I still approach things in a similar way. And I mean, the big lesson I had was the Morrissey. I don't know if you know about the Morrissey thing, but I interviewed Morrissey for Enemy, and it did not go well.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
he ended
Did
up
did read up on that a little bit. Yeah.
he ended up suing the paper. So, but I don't know what the lessons are from that because ultimately he did say what we said he said. So there's not really any lessons other than make sure you record the interview, which luckily.
There you
Right.
go.
Or just don't talk to Morrissey to begin with, and yeah, just cut your losses.
Yeah, yes. But I mean, that was another pinch me moment being with Morrissey because I'm a huge Morrissey fan, despite what he might have said afterwards. But I love the Smiths, and it's interesting seeing the Smiths at the top of the list actually, um, which because in a way makes perfect sense because that is a key, probably the key Enemy album. So seeing that,
Right.
well, yeah.
So I guess that I am curious, like with Morrissey controversy aside, would you still keep that as a number one album overall, or what if you had to pick a number one with a bullet? Put you on the
Yeah,
spot here.
I mean, it's such a funny thing, isn't it? Because are you picking your favorite album or are you picking the best? And what do you even mean by best? It's such a strange thing.
Hmm.
My favorite album in the world is um, the Hidden Cameras debut album, Smell of Our Own, which is, but I think it would be quite mad to say that is the best album ever made. Even it's just my personal favorite. It really speaks to me, and I find it really beautiful. Um, but if I was picking for something like this, I'd probably pick probably either the first or third Velvet Underground album.
Yeah.
That would be, or possibly Marvin Gaye's "What's Going On."
Ooh. Yeah, I don't think
Ooh.
I'd object to that one. Yeah. Any of those would be good. It's kind of one of those things we're finding on the show. The more and more we review these albums, we're hoping for a clunker. But when you have 500 of the best albums of all time, they're all pretty good. They all have an argument, to be on the list. They all
Yeah,
have, especially when you get like The Strokes, "Is This It?" is number four. I mean,
yeah.
yeah, that's one of the most important records of our lifetime for sure. So it's a tough one to put that list together, I'd imagine.
Definitely. But I think,
Yeah.
yeah. Just looking at the top 10, just sort of, it just seems so dated now. What's so interesting about that list. It's like these days, someone would be. Well, I think people's tastes have changed a lot.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
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 Rolling
it is
Stone like
interesting.
updates
Yeah.
theirs like every few years or things like that, and I'm
right.
like, that's kind of cheating, but okay.
No, it's probably good because it is a fluid thing, isn't it? And
Yeah, I think it's good to have one major list doing that and one major list that refuses.
uses change. Yeah,
You get
Maybe
both sides.
maybe by 2028 we can get a hold of somebody over there and have them put together a new one, and just kind of see how it's evolved in the last 15 years, and yeah, see what the enemy folks now think. So circling back to New York, real quick, I'm kind of curious: are there any bands that you saw that you thought might like make it big, that never broke? Whether it's just the band fell apart, or they just didn't get their break?
well, they sort of made it because they had a career, but I'd say Jeffrey Lewis was someone who I just think is so unbelievably talented and funny, and maybe partly because he's so DIY and so refuses to sell out in any way or compromise. He didn't get to showcase that talent on a bigger stage, but
Mm,
yeah, he to me is just someone who is a bit of a genius, and I would have liked to see him get bigger.
yeah. So I think we threw this fun one at you here. Hopefully, you've had enough time to noodle on it. Now, assuming the Strokes would be one of the bands, if you could book
Yeah,
like a four-band show of just 21st century bands and artists, who
yeah.
might you put together?
I was going to give myself some rules on this because again, if it's hard to make a top 500 list, it's very hard to make a top.
Right?
Oh
And
yeah.
there's loads of people like Amy Winehouse or I don't know. There's just so many people you could consider for that. So I was going to make it indie bands from my period at NME.
Okay, that works.
So I was going to have the Hidden Cameras opening up because they're a kind of obscure um, thing that's going to confuse the hell out of everyone who turns up early. Uh, and then I was going to have the Long Blondes next. I don't know how if they came across. They are on the list actually. The Long Blondes, I think, are on the list.
Are they? Okay.
Um, but they were a Sheffield band, kind of really into like old films, really
Oh, yep.
classic movies, really great fashion. They're a bit like Pulp in a way, um,
Okay.
and I think they had three
We're a
women in
very
the
pro
band.
pulp show.
Yeah,
So yeah, they're
um,
at number 383 for their album "Someone to Drive You
383.
Home." There you go. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get to them.
Yeah, so they're on that, and then the Cribs I'd have second. They're my favourite band from my time at Enemy. They're on the list as well, actually. But the Cribs were my favourite live band from that whole period, and they're always completely chaotic. I think they're a lot more professional these days, but I saw gigs with the Cribs where they would play four songs. They had a catchphrase which was three songs, then off to A&E. That was kind of their motto, and it did actually play out like that sometimes. Yeah, there was a lot of broken glass, and yeah, I think Ryan used to wear this pair of jeans which gradually fell apart throughout a tour, and he just every photo shoot, every time you met him, he'd just have this same pair of jeans on, but it was almost like just like a thread of cotton at some point. This
The jeans that would not die.
yeah. So they'd be second, and then the Strokes could headline. Despite me saying that I was a bit disappointed in their live show.
I mean, it sounds like with those first three bands, though, you more than make up if the Strokes don't bring it that night. It sounds like it'd be a fun bill altogether, and you're still walking out happy. You saw some good music and some good performers.
Definitely, yeah. That'd be my little indie show, just for my own pleasure. Yeah.
Love it. So I'm curious, we have gotten a few interesting stories since we've been doing this. Now, keep in mind, we are not a family-friendly podcast, so you're welcome to say whatever you like. Do you have like a crazy backstage story, or like, I can't believe I'm here in the middle of this party? Or one time we had one of the guys got on stage at one of the festivals banging a drum for one of the bands, and it was just like, okay, how did you get roped into that as a journalist?
I mean, I've got so many. I mean, talk about going on stage. It's like I was the bear for British Sea Power. They used to have a big, gigantic bear who came on stage with British Sea Power.
Oh, fun.
And so I remember being backstage and got this really heavy head that I had to put on, and I staggered out. You know, it's always their last song. They had a bear who would like maraud across the stage, but I couldn't see where I was going, and I was finding it hard to lift this head. And I knocked the violinist. There's this. I knocked the violinist. I knocked her off. I think I might have even knocked her off the stage.
Oh, no.
But like, obviously the fans thought it was brilliant because I'd gone. I think they said I was the wildest bear they'd ever had, but it's just because
I was gonna say,
couldn't see where I was going. And
that's what a bear does. Yeah.
And then I was also on stage with Goldie Looking Chain at Reading Festival. This is kind of the life of a journalist. You get to do these crazy things. And the Hidden Cameras who I've talked about, they got me on stage once, but I had to wear leather pants, well, I suppose what do you call them, leather underwear. So just leather, like kind of, what do you call pants in what you call pants, trousers? So what do you call your underwear?
Yeah, just
boxers,
undies.
underwear. Yeah.
Yeah, but they
Oh
weren't.
yeah, there you go.
You know, they were like wife front things. They were like these leather wife fronts. So
The tidy whities.
yeah, but black leather and a balaclava, and that's all I was wearing. And
Oh, at least they protected your identity.
yeah, exactly. Oh, God, I did need that balaclava.
It's like, yeah, I feel a little better. I mean, you can't see my face in these.
Exactly.
From tech support to leather undies and a balaclava, the Tim Jones story brought to you by Indy 500.
That's the path.
I was in a couple of music videos as well, which was quite funny. I was in the Kaiser Chiefs video for Every Day I Love You Less and Less.
Oh, wow.
And just in a cafe. And I was in the original Killers video for, what's it called? All These Things That I've Become. Is that what it's called?
Oh, yeah. Talk about an album there. Yeah.
Well, that was such a bad video. They actually remade their video. And
did they? Oh, so no.
That's only available on YouTube, I think.
How did that happen? Are you just like around doing a piece with the band and?
Yeah, you're about to interview them, so they're like, hey, why don't you come and join us for this? Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
So that's quite good.
So any advice for like the youth of today listening to this that, think, hey, I want a career in journalism. I want to be, reviewing albums. What would you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the way in now seems to be kind of really knowing audio and video stuff and being on top of TikTok and stuff like that. But I just sound like an old man if I say anything to do with that. So,
you're in good company. It's all good.
Yeah.
The key thing is having a voice and not trying to blend in with what you read, but trying to stand out from it. A lot of people will send kind of right into the Guardian, and it will. Sometimes it's people who I speak to, and they're really exciting, kind of vibey people. But when they write, it turns into this kind of trying to be like, an old man critic. Like trying to be that different person, and it's like, well, we've got enough of those already. We want a bit of spark and a bit of youth. So I'd say try and think. I mean, getting almost like an alter ego. It worked for me. Having a kind of person who you're writing from a kind of almost like a character in a way. That's kind of
what does the Tim in leather undies think of this album? Not the one at home having a cup of Earl Grey. Yeah.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Love it. Well, Tim, it's been an absolute treat to talk to you this afternoon. Is there anything you'd like to promote? You mentioned it. Do you have any music projects out there or anything like that we could check out, or even some fun links?
Not really, unless you want to read my stuff on The Guardian, which is there under my Guardian byline. I still write about music a bit, but I sort of branched out now to a few other things. There's a lot of different arts and celebrity stuff on there.
Do you work with another former enemy or Laura Snapes over there?
Yes, yeah, work with Laura.
Okay.
She's on the music desk.
Put in a good word. She said no to us earlier, so we'll
Oh,
hope
really?
maybe someday.
I also
We
work with Alex Needham,
I think
who-
she's probably taken enough arrows about the enemy list that she's probably doesn't want to talk about it anymore. But
That's
let her know that we're nice boys. We
yeah,
won't be
okay.
we won't be like that.
I will reassure her that
Okay.
there may be a few other enemy guests we've had that brought up the fact that she had 5 national albums in her top 50 as her top 5, and that kind of threw the list off.
Yes.
So
But
it
as
got
far
us
as
a little riled
as
up.
far as we're concerned, that's valid and absolutely awesome. So
I think it goes back to that thing, doesn't it? Of, are you picking your favorite albums in that moment, or are you trying to be detached? And I think whenever I've done these lists, I do a kind of weird mix of both, where I'm not quite.
yeah.
A few
Yeah,
favorites.
I was going to say we just recently did like a tournament of albums that we think should be on there and that we're going to, like pretend is number 501, and like we kind of had the same like, is this from your heart, or is this like apply to the list, or
Who's on that list? Who's likely to?
Oh, who did we let through? Okay.
We came
I
out with
know,
Tom Petty as a winner.
Okay.
Somebody that didn't have a single album on the top 500.
Yeah, Full Moon Fever.
Okay, I don't even know that record very well, so I'll have to go and listen to it. I know Tom Petty, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you'll look at the track list on
yeah.
that and say, "Oh, wait, I do."
Oh yeah, I'm sure,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, we
then I
pulled
think also
some metal albums on there, some other indie ones, and we tried to stay prior to 2013 as well, just for the sake of continuity. So that there's definitely some albums like Mars Volta was one that we were
that was
pushing
great.
through. Yeah,
I actually loved that album when I was working at NME. I thought it was kind of no, that was a
well,
great...
shoot. Too bad you didn't have a list on there. We might have been able to review them someday.
I mean, there's so
next year. Yeah,
there's so many funny things. I mean, I think we need to shout out the fact that Lost Souls by Doves. I have nothing against Doves whatsoever, but does anyone in the world think it's a better album than Bitches Brew by Miles Davis? It's just they get quite silly.
Yeah, we've put
that was part of why we liked the list, though. It's so it's got a real, there's a real point of view to it. It's not like the Rolling Stone one's a little more general, and there's probably 5 different podcasts who are doing the Rolling Stone list, but we wanted something that was interesting and would have a lot of albums that were like that we're not going to run into like a super classic album every single week. Definitely. I say that during the week that we're doing the Strokes as a Sid, but we've had
the concept, because I grew up as a teenager obsessed with lists, and had books that were just the 50 best albums ever. I had all the Q magazines, all the NME magazines. Mm-hmm. It's how I got into music and broadened my kind of knowledge of all the classics and the canon, as they say. And then you sort of spend the rest of your career trying to kind of demolish that canon that you've kind of had built up.
Maybe we're out here inspiring the next Tim Jones. Somebody's listening to us muse about the one of the Morrissey solo albums. Like, this is what I want.
All right. Well, Tim, thank you again so much for your time. It was wonderful chatting with you. Hopefully we can chat again sometime, and maybe next year this time we'll get some picks from you for albums that should be on there, and do some justice in the world.
Great. Thank you very much for having me.
We'll figure out the algorithm they used and like get yours in there.
They didn't think there was an algorithm, sadly.